All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Successful Atlassian Cloud Migration webinar. I'm David Mitchell. I am a consultant and an Atlassian certified professional with Expium, a Valientis company. Expium is a platinum solution partner, and in order to be a platinum solution partner, you have to have a number of certified professionals, and a platinum partner is the highest level of partner that you can work with. Before we get started, I'm going to go into a couple announcements. One fun announcement is we have a giveaway today, and it's right here. This is a MagCube Pro. This is going to be given away to one of our attendees, random drawing by our producer in the control room here. It says MagCube Pro. It's a 10,000 milliamp magnetic charger. It's a charger for your phone, it looks like. So you prop this up on your desk, and then if you have a phone that charges wirelessly, it does something like that. So we'll be giving one of those away today at the end, so stick around for that. With additional announcements, the webinar today this is a great resource. It's an interesting topic. It's nearly impossible to make this boring because there's so much to talk about. So we're going to be covering a lot of material really quickly. And as we do this today, you're going to see just what the scope of a migration is. It's a lot bigger than most people usually realize that it is. And even with what we talk about today, we're going to really just be scratching the surface. And if you have if you know you're imminently planning a migration, we have an additional resource, an additional event here. It's our Cloud Migration Workshop. You can take a note of the date here. It's also free. You can sign up for this on our website. June 6th, it says 10:30 to 2:30. That's 4 hours. It tends to be more like 3 hours with a half an hour lunch break. The way it's different from this webinar is, first of all, it's not just a longer version of this webinar. It's completely different material. We have a panel of professionals here that work with our migration practice instead of just one person. It's also interactive and conversational. We discuss some things, and we give you some really cool stuff. We give you a Confluence space that's yours indefinitely, that gives you all of the tools that we use to actually plan and document your migration. So it's a cool thing. Consider attending that if you have a migration in your future. Additionally, we have Q&A at the end. What I want to tell you to do is, as I'm going through the material, feel free to post your questions in the Q&A section while I'm delivering the webinar. I won't stop and answer questions as we go through it, but you don't necessarily have to wait until the end to post your question. If you have a question, go ahead and throw it out there. All right, with that, we will get started. What we're doing here is we're going to talk through the phases of a migration, a process, from beginning, conception, to the end, completion. These phases that you see here, assess, plan, prep, test, migrate, launch, are the phases that are outlined by Atlassian. So we're taking Atlassian's lead here. We're going to talk through these phases. One thing that I want to point out before we get started is these first three phases, assess, plan, and prep, we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about those phases because the bulk of your work in a migration will be spent in those phases, and those phases even throughout the course of a migration take up the most time. Test, migrate, and launch happen fairly quickly in the process at the end. So as you see us going through here and we get to prep and we're about at the half an hour mark, we're right on track. And so with that, we'll jump right in. Why are we migrating to cloud? A lot of you know why. If you're on server, Atlassian has announced the end of life of server. February of 2024. support for the server product is going to end. So that is what is moving a lot of people off of server. They're going to either cloud or data center. Most people are going to cloud. We will talk about migrating off of server in general. A lot of our material today is going to be oriented specifically towards cloud, but we'll also talk a little bit about data center, just talk about choices between choosing those two options as you're moving off of server. That's one of the reasons people are moving. Another reason is cloud features. The cloud is just a lot more feature rich than server, and people really appreciate the features of cloud. When we work with clients on server and data center, well, when I'm working with a client that is on server and they're getting ready to migrate to cloud, we will see that they are trying a lot of various add-ons, and a lot of those, the functionality of those add-ons are included in cloud already. So we have to kind of say, okay, hold up on those, wait till you get to cloud and see everything that it has before you look at what add-ons you might be interested in. Another question that we look at is, what can I migrate to cloud? There are some Atlassian products that have a cloud equivalent and some that don't. The items that you see circled in green are all items that have a cloud equivalent. Jira, Jira Software, Jira Core, Service Desk, Bitbucket, and Confluence. The items that you see in blue are items that don't necessarily have a corresponding cloud product, but do have an equivalent, like the crowd product. In the cloud, the corresponding product there is Atlassian Access. With Bamboo, there's a product called Bitbucket Pipelines that takes the place of that functionality. These other items are some of these are either don't have an equivalent or are already cloud-based products anyway. But in terms of migrating to cloud, it's the Jira products, Confluence, and Bitbucket. Differences between cloud and data center. We talked about going to, these being your two options. And so a lot of companies look at these and say, well, which one should we do? What the purpose of this slide is to show is that cloud is going to meet almost everyone's needs. The cases for needing data center are less common. So let's just go through this real quickly. The first item here where it says 20K per instance, it says now 35K. That's referring to users. There was a time just a few months ago where the limit on the users that you could have in a cloud instance was 20,000. That has since been upgraded to 35,000. And I happen to know that this year sometime it's planned to be raised. Atlassian plans to raise that to even 50,000. So there's very few scenarios where cloud would not work for most people. If you're looking at user capacity, cloud pretty much has you covered. If you need more than 50,000, well, 35,000 for right now, users in one instance, then that pretty much would decide that you would go to data center. Now, timing wise, if that is an issue for you, knowing that 50,000 is coming, maybe you wouldn't necessarily have to go to data center. We do have clients that do have users in the tens of thousands. The case where that happens is when you're using Service Desk and Jira Service Management, and some of our customers have tens of thousands of customers interacting with their Service Desk items. So those are the cases where you get up into those numbers. The next three items: reliability, security, and governance. I'm going to talk about them in just as a group together, because there's what's similar among these is that between cloud and data center, on the data center side, you have complete and total responsibility for all of those. On cloud, you Atlassian sort of provides a minimum, sort of a what's the term I'm looking for? A minimum critical mass of, they have a base standard that they hold you to, and then, but they don't necessarily do all of it for you. Like, well, I mean, they take care of reliability. If you're doing data center, it's completely up to you. Your reliability really depends on how well you manage it. Security and compliance, Atlassian holds you to a fairly high standard of minimum. Data center, again, it just depends on how you manage it. Governance controls, Atlassian does implement some level of governance, but you also really need to implement your own layer of governance on top of that. On data center, it's completely up to you. You can have good governance in place, or it can be the wild, wild west. Differences between cloud and data center in terms of apps and extensibility. The selection of apps for cloud is a lot more rich than on data center. And in terms of extensibility and integrations, it's a lot easier. There are a lot more integrations available in cloud, and it's easier to implement those integrations simply by nature of the cloud being in the cloud. A lot of the integrations are also cloud-based. So that's a little bit on those differences. Let's talk about subscription levels. When you're going to cloud, naturally you have to decide what subscription level you're going to be at. Free isn't an option for most people. I mean, most companies were looking at standard, premium, and enterprise. And so what I want to bring out here with this slide is, let me just sort of cut to the chase here. I'll tell you what we see. The vast majority of our clients, I'd say about 80%, use premium with an Atlassian Access subscription. That's the majority. That's what meets most companies' needs. There are a few smaller edge case of companies that want to use standard, and there are some specific circumstances that enterprise is suited for, but the vast majority of companies, premium with access works very well for them. Standard is for companies, they may want to just save money, so they're willing to go with less features, but there are some features in premium that really tip you over the edge to say, no, we need premium. So we'll talk about those. And really the ones here are the ones that I've highlighted in brighter blue. With premium, you have a sandbox, and these are things that you can't add on to standard by an add-on or any kind of subscription. That you have to go to premium to get it. With most companies, if you're running any kind of mission critical IT operation, the idea of having a Jira instance without a sandbox or without some sort of a dev environment is untenable. So that's what causes most companies to go to premium. You don't have a sandbox with standard. If your operation is relatively simple, then standard could work. It just depends on what you're wanting to implement. Advanced roadmaps, great, cool product. Most companies want that. You have to go to premium to have that. Differences in automation. The automation is different between standard and premium. On standard, you can do automations within a project. In premium, you can do automations scoped across projects or across all projects. Real briefly, I'll talk a little bit about the scenarios where enterprise makes sense. What we see is companies that are in an acquisition mode. They're acquiring other companies, and they're in a situation where they're merging with other companies that bring companies in. These other companies have their own instances of Jira. Enterprise makes sense because they can bring those other instances of Jira into their Atlassian org quickly and easily, and that allows them to quickly implement things that they need to implement right away, things like reporting. Some you might be tempted to say, well, couldn't we just have one instance of premium and just merge it all together and put all the projects in one instance? You can, but what we've seen with that is interesting too. You wouldn't think that among different instances, having different instances using a lot of the same project keys would be common, but it is surprisingly a lot more common than you would think. We have a client that's going this route with premium, and they're bringing in another instance, and there are like 7 different instances where they've got projects coming in that have duplicate project keys. So that adds a whole level of complexity. That just makes that migration even more complex. And if you go with enterprise and you have multiple instances within an organization, like I said, that can have you can bring other instances in quickly. And if you want to merge them together into a single instance, you can. There's nothing stopping you from doing that later. So we do have clients where enterprise is the best fit, at least at the beginning. Atlassian Access is available by a separate subscription at the standard and premium tier. If you have an enterprise subscription, Access is included. So the primary point here is that a premium subscription with an Access subscription is what we see most of our customers using 80 to 85% of the time. So you can take that into consideration as you're deciding what's best for you. This is just an interesting thing. This is a survey where this company, Tech Validate, surveyed a bunch of Atlassian customers just to see what they thought the top benefits of cloud are. So this is just kind of interesting. The first one, the top one, peace of mind around maintaining security and version upgrades. I can see that because when you go to cloud, it's completely off your plate. On server or data center, it's something that you have to be concerned with. You have to implement, you have to plan, decide when you're going to do that. In cloud, Atlassian just takes care of all of it for you. Improve speed and accessibility. I do believe that. It would be easy to think that a cloud-based platform would be slower, but in today's world that we live in, we're working remotely, and we're working remotely through VPN and over the internet, attaching to instances of, server or data center that's designed to work in an on-prem environment, and they're not optimized for going over the internet. But yet we've become accustomed to dealing with that sort of lag. That's just sort of our new normal now. But when you go to cloud, you have a product that is designed and implemented from the ground up to be optimized for speed over the internet. So when it's not at all unusual to go from VPN into server and then go to cloud and have some quicker response, and notice that. Improves employee satisfaction. Not sure what that's about exactly. Maybe they like the features and they like the interface in cloud better. Improve performance sort of goes along with number 2. Reduce total cost of ownership for Atlassian products. Makes sense because you don't have to maintain your own data center, all that hardware. Improve security. I can see that. Depending on how well you implement your own security. There are some security risks on-prem that you just don't have in cloud. Increase capacity for teams to focus on strategic goals. Not sure why people feel that way, but apparently some people feel that way. Better third-party apps and integrations, for sure, without a doubt. Like I've already said before, just the catalog of third-party apps from cloud is much broader and rich. Integrations are far easier in the cloud just by virtue of being in the cloud. All right. Getting back to what we were just talking about cost of ownership. What this slide shows you here is that your subscription costs in cloud are, total add up to, a greater amount than what you're probably paying on-premise for server. But the total cost of ownership is far less because all of these other items that you have to pay for in an on-prem situation go away. I think that this makes sense to anybody that's been doing IT for any period of time. One thing that I want to show you real quick on this cost savings, I'm going to go to this cloud savings calculator that Atlassian provides. Let me see if there's a way I can throw this into chat for you. See if you can get that. Let me show you this thing. This is something really cool that Atlassian provides. It's a tool that allows you to calculate your savings. You can choose the product that you're on. Let's just say Jira Software Server. How many users? Say you've got 100. Add an instance of, let's say, well, let's not add an instance. Anyway, you get your estimate. Now, then you can select which, in the cloud, which subscription you're doing, and it shows you your difference. Now, it might be easy to say, oh, Atlassian provides this tool. This is a marketing tool. This is rigged. It really isn't. What it does here is, notice it allows you to edit your assumptions. So you can go in and you can change these numbers to based on your particular scenario. Like you can change the number of administrators. You can change, say you've got 2 administrators and their salary is, something else. You can put that in there and update the results. So that's a cool tool to look at. Take a look at that. That's on the cost savings. All right, moving on. Cloud adjustments and challenges. We'll dig into just some differences between server and cloud that you'll deal with. And let's see. I'll touch on 2 or 3 of these a little heavier and not so much of the others. Marketplace apps, again, I've said this is a broken record. There are more apps to choose from there. User group and group management, one thing you need to be aware of when you go to cloud is that there's going to, for those of you that are doing your user and group management and administration, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. The UI, the interface that you're using, and the structure of the way security and users is structured in cloud is different. It's not a simple case of you go to cloud and you see everything works exactly the same and you see the same interface as you had in server. It's a little bit different. So it's not a big deal, but there's some things to learn there. User interface differences between server and cloud. This really depends on, server, well, they stopped updating server. But even at data center logs behind cloud. It's sort of catching up, but all of Atlassian's love in terms of UI and improvements, 90% of it goes to cloud. In terms of these UI differences, what we have done, when we've had our clients go to cloud, they've often asked us, saying, hey, can you give us an hour training session on the differences? And we've done that. Cloud isn't that different. If you were to look over someone's shoulder at Jira, you would be hard pressed to be able to tell whether they were using cloud or server. But it is optimized. It's just a little bit different. And you can get by without doing specific training around that. It'll be just a little bit of a bump in the road, but we can make it less of a bump in the road if we do some training around that. Let's see. Jira automation. Automations don't migrate. You basically have to recreate those. Work management projects. In cloud, work management is what is the corresponding product to Jira Core on server. And it's a more developed product. So this doesn't really have specifically, this doesn't specifically have to do with a migration, but this is just a difference in cloud. I'll give you a real quick preview. Here's a cloud project that is a Jira work management project. And basically what they've done is they've just put some really nice features in here, some premium features. They've made it a lot nicer. You've got a board where on server, Jira Core doesn't have a board. They give you this list view, which is sort of like kind of like a spreadsheet grid, and you can edit data in line here. People really like this. This is something specific to work management projects. You don't have this in Jira software. There's a calendar view if to look at your team's work on a calendar. There's this timeline. It's sort of a junior roadmap kind of product, and you can create your own forms. If you want to take information from clients or users into your project. And so I think that's, for the most part, that's the differences. They've made it a lot nicer product. The other thing about work management projects are there are a lot of out-of-the-box templates, and what Atlassian has done in that case is it's really a lot more than what is typically your out-of-the-box templates. You know, any kind of product you see, you have a bunch of templates, and how much they're worth is questionable. Atlassian has put a lot of research into creating templates geared specifically to specific types of businesses and operations, and they want you to be able to take that template if it matches your scenario to be able to create a project with that template and just be on the ground ready to roll, sort of like a turnkey application all on its own. So that is something in cloud that the server does not have. Team managed projects. Cloud has something called team managed projects. What it is it's a team managed project instead of a company managed project. What this is, it's sort of a self-service model. If you're accustomed to maybe you use Microsoft O365 and how you can set that up to where your employee can just create ad hoc sort of throwaway workspaces to use if they need, and they don't have to bother your administrators. This is the same type of deal. This is not necessarily a good thing. Team managed projects in and of themselves are not bad, but you really need to educate everyone on how to use them the right way. What we do is, with customers that are migrating from server to cloud, what we recommend in cloud is that you turn team managed projects off, because they're on by default, and when they're on by default, users can just spin up their own projects. Now, okay, that's okay. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not okay. What happens is you wind up having some mission critical data or work in a team managed project, and it can't be accessed and administered and reported on the same way company managed projects can. And from the ground up, when Atlassian created team managed projects, they did not create them with any kind of intention or vision for being able to migrate them from team managed projects to company managed projects. So it's been a real difficulty to do that. Over time, over the past year or so, Atlassian has done some things to make it a little bit easier, but every time we're working with a client that has team managed projects that need to go to company managed projects, and that happens really often, it's not at a point to where it's an easy process, and in a lot of cases it's sort of a case by case basis, and our people who work on those have to kind of adapt, and we've had to create different tooling. Anyway, the point is, we recommend that you turn it off, because after you do you undertake a major undertaking like going from server to cloud, you're wanting this to all be as smooth as possible, right? What you don't need is to get to the cloud and have some new variable thrown in from left field that was unpredictable to deal with. So you don't have team managed projects on server. It's better to turn them off in cloud, so things just stay copacetic. In terms of using team managed projects, our recommendation would be turn those on and use them if and when you decide that you want to use them, and only do that after you have done the communication and the education that you need to do with your users, so your users know what they are, what they're for, when to use them, and when not to use them. All right. Complexity of your migration. Everybody wants to know, how long is a migration going to take? No migration is the same. They're all different. There are a variety of factors with each with each migration, with each situation that we take into account that add up to the complexity. And the more complex it is, the longer it takes. Some of the things that can add to the complexity is how many users you have. If you have an instance with 100 users, that's going to tend to be easier and be on the shorter end of things. You've got something big like 5,000 users, that's major. That's going to take a few more months. The number and type of add-ons you have that have to move with you, that adds complexity. How much automation and scripting you have, that adds complexity. Third-party integrations in multiple instances. All of these things, your unique combination of what you have here adds up to your complexity. As a partner, we can help you evaluate all of those things. In terms of the actual timeline, I'd say migrations tend to be anywhere from, I really hate to say 2 months to a year. Maybe I should say 3 months to a year. There's been one time I can an instance where we pulled off a simple one in a couple of months, but that's not routine at all. Smaller ones can be 3 to 4 months, medium 6, 7. Really big involved ones can be up to a year. But you have to take all of these things into account to sort of evaluate what your complexity and what your length of time is going to be. All right, let's take a brief timeout just to talk about Expium a little bit. Expium is a Valiantis company. Together with Valiantis, I believe we're the largest Atlassian Platinum partner now. We have a variety of areas of practice. Anything you need, it's a really broad statement to say anything you need we have, but we really do. And that's what this slide is about a little bit. And actually, we have areas of practice that aren't even represented on this slide. One thing, let me just touch on these real briefly. Let's talk about licensing real quick. You can work with an Atlassian partner to do licensing. And when you do that, what we say here on the slide is you will receive the same price as you would directly from Atlassian. Actually, if you work with us, we can actually get you a better price than you can get directly from Atlassian. That's the power of having the scale of being a platinum partner. And our licensing services, working with you on licensing, it's entirely free. We have people here that their whole job is to work with helping companies out with licensing. All you need to do is go to our website, grab our phone number, call in. We can get you talking to whoever. We can get you talking to somebody to help you with your licensing. The benefit of licensing with a partner is then you also have a relationship with a partner. So if you have a question, you can call and say, hey, what about this? Dealing with licensing can be kind of a maze, so it's good to have help there. Training, we have any kind of training you would need. We have free training, we have paid training, we have on-premise training, with remote training, we have open group training, we have private training. We can do private training specifically for your company. We have a variety of curriculums. We have, if there's some training you need, it's very likely that we have a curriculum for it. If you need customized training, we have created customized curriculums for clients. So if there's training you need, we would love to talk to you about that. We have another division of the company that is a development group. So we've got developers if we need to do something custom. Consulting, we do consulting engagements, which are actually kind of fun. They're my favorite, is where we just contract with a company to just give them support over a period of time to whatever degree they need. Some areas of practice that aren't on here. We have an area of practice around Agile at Scale, and we're actually doing training around Agile at Scale and safe practices. And we also work with implementing and doing training around, let's see, Jira Align, that Agile at Scale product. All right, so enough of that commercial. We'll jump back into the material here. In terms of migration, one of the biggest challenges that we have to deal with and gets a lot of attention up front is the area of managing users and getting your users from server to cloud. And the reason this is such a big deal is because in cloud, your users, the unique identifier for each of your users is their email address. That is the primary key, so to speak. In server, as I'm sure you're aware, well, basically, in order to migrate to cloud, every user has to have an email address and they have to have a unique email address. That is not the case on server typically. That's not the sort of state that a user base on server is in. Typically, you've got a lot of users that don't have an email address at all. You'll have a lot of users that have the same email address. Maybe you'll make a bunch of service accounts and you'll give the same email address to all those service accounts. You might have some of your individual users that have more than one account within the system, and maybe they have their same email address on both of them. All of that has to be resolved and fixed before the migration, Atlassian's migration tools will actually run. We have a couple of different migration tools that Atlassian provides, and these tools do a check on your server system before it actually initiates a migration process. And one of the things is it checks is your users, and those users have to be in pretty much perfect order, or the migration tool just will not run. So it is a roadblock in terms of it's not something you can say, oh, we'll do it later. We don't want to deal with that. You have to deal with it. So we go through this process with all of our customers that we migrate. So that is a huge aspect, and it takes a significant amount of time. It's one of the biggest tasks in the process. In terms of users, you also need to decide if you want to do manual or automated user provisioning. If you want to do automated user provisioning, you need to subscribe to Atlassian Access. If you want to do single sign-on, you also need Atlassian Access for that. The more users you have, the more Atlassian Access is going to make sense for you. If you have a small user base, say 60, 100, 150, that can be manageable if you want to have your administrators maintaining that manually. Maintaining it manually really isn't the ideal situation, regardless of how large your user base is, because it can be error prone. If you want things to be automatic and have users automatically provisioned and deprovisioned and given access through something like Active Directory, you use Access for that. And like I said, the larger your user base gets, the more practical and necessary that becomes. If you have a large user base, 400, 500, even more, that's getting to be unreasonable for your administrators to try to maintain manually. All right, let's talk about preparation. Oh, this is still the planning phase. Sorry, I thought we were going to prep next. Planning. As you plan and organize a migration, I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about what we do as we work with our customers. And if you're going to do it yourself, we recommend that you do this as well. We track the work in a Jira project. And when we work with the customer, we have a migration tracking Confluence instance that we set up that has a variety of structure built into it with all of the things that we do, and things like app assessments and timelines and migration checklists. If you're going to do it yourself, we recommend you do something similar. You really need to be very organized with that. Let's see, what other notes do we have here on this? One thing to talk about here is a little bit about planning your strategy, what strategy you're going to take as you move from server to cloud. There's roughly 4 different approaches that we tend to see. We see optimize and shift, meaning do some cleanup on your server before you migrate, and then sort of go through a migration process that moves everything over. A lot of times customers like the opportunity to optimize things or clean things up. It's sort of the attitude there is, let's leave the old junk behind and not take everything. Or you can do another option is just lift, what we call lift and shift. Is just take everything, don't clean it up, just move it all over. You can do that. Phased, you can do sort of a phased approach, which is sort of project by project, even confluence space by confluence space. It's something we don't see real often, but we have seen customers do that. Another approach is what we call start fresh. For some customers, it's good to just create new projects in cloud and have their teams what was going to say here, that tends to be usually when teams, the work is a smaller scale, or the work is just sort of more manageable, the amount of work is more manageable, and have those teams just start creating their new work in their cloud project and then wrap up their work in their server side and just sort of transition over that way. All right, so you need to determine the best method. When we're working with a client on migration, we help you through that process. All right, preparation. This is when you're getting close to actually executing your migration. There's communication and server prep. With communication, you just start socializing your migration into your organization, start talking about it, start letting people know that it's coming. Develop a communication plan. We have a boilerplate communication plan. If you're working with us, we can help you with that. In terms of server prep, you need to look at the version that you're on server. You need to make sure that you're at a version that you can migrate from. It's probably going to be good for you to clean things up. We have a migration checklist that you can go through to make sure everything on your server is in order. And you need to review the big one here. You need to review the cloud versions of your third-party apps and add-ons and make sure that, well, just look at and see if the ones that you absolutely need have corresponding cloud versions. And also, you may need to have your add-ons at a certain version on your server before they can be migrated. So it's also good to just upgrade things and get them to the latest version. All right, next we're going to talk about creating a runbook and timeline. You absolutely have to have a runbook. You need, you get into, we're going to talk about testing here in a minute. You have to have a runbook to make your test executions consistent. Because you need to go through that and know that you have a solid process that works. So when you get to actually doing your production migration, you have a process that you can depend on. Establish the timeline. This is also something that you create as you go through your testing. You start seeing how long things are going to take. And so then you can plan how that's going to work into your days or a weekend when you do your production migration. Okay. Testing the migration process. Excuse me, let me take a drink of water here real quick. You absolutely need to perform tests of your migration process. Like the slide says here, your goal is to have a stable and predictable migration process. So, and this is what we do. We practice this. We'll set up a test instance to migrate to. Sometimes we'll set up a test instance, a test server instance to migrate from. Often, well, anyway, I'm getting a little too into the weeds there. But we need to perform test runs of your migration. You need to do that. You will, in doing so, you will find areas where you need to tweak your migration process. So you'll find issues. You need to resolve those issues. In so doing, update and improve your runbook. Repeat that testing until your test is stable, successful, and predictable. After you get to the point to where you've tested that process and it's all stable, it's very important that you avoid doing modifications to your process or even your environment between the time of your testing and your actual migration. If you make modifications to your process or your environments, you really need to do another test. But so it's better to just avoid modifying things when you get to that point. Let's talk about user acceptance testing. After this is part of those test migrations that you do. After you do those, have your select group of key managers, stakeholders, and users help and do acceptance testing on what you've done. Get them in there, Have them look at it, have them test common day-to-day tasks, test their workflows, review the screens, make sure everything looks good. Then you get down to actually doing the migrate. Pick the date, arrange for Atlassian support. Make sure Atlassian is aware of your migration, and they want to be aware. They want to be there to help you. Communicate the date to your organization, and when the time comes, execute your runbook, your migration runbook that you've created and tested. After you've done that on your migration day, you do a quick QA of the instance, more UAT, and then you make a go, no-go decision. If everything looks good, then you're like, okay, we're good to go, and you move forward. That's usually what happens. Very rare that I've ever seen a no-go situation. So you do that, then you send your launch announcement, invite everybody to the new site, and there you are. One thing that we also recommend is that you, after you do that, is that you take some time to celebrate what you've accomplished, because it is definitely quite an undertaking. And once you've gotten there, you need to pat yourself on the back. All right, we are at the Q&A time. Does anybody have any questions? I'm not seeing, let's see. I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A chat at this point. Any questions about anything we've talked about today? Anything that we've left out? One question that we get from time to time is, what can I do to prepare now? And in response to that, one thing that we really recommend is to get your InfoSec team involved as early in the process as possible. If you're going to move to cloud, you don't want to get halfway through the process and have your InfoSec team say, oh, whoop, hold up, we don't know if we're going to let you do this. We have seen that happen, and that's not good to happen in the middle or late in the process. So you really need to address, have those conversations early on if you can. Still not seeing any questions yet. I'm going to go ahead and do this giveaway. While I'm doing that, feel free to, if there's any questions, feel free to go ahead and post them out there. I will answer them before we wrap up. We've got a great group today. A lot of people joined. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, let's see. My producer, Kylie, do you have the winner for me here? Let's see if I'm in the right chat. She will let me know. Okay. While she is letting me know, I'm not seeing that yet. This last slide, I'll talk through this a little bit. On our training, we have every kind of training you could shake a stick at. You can take a look at our website here, the xpm.com training. Everything that we have scheduled is listed there. You can enroll. If you have a migration that's imminent, please definitely consider attending the cloud migration workshop. I believe it was June 6th. It's free. We give away some really cool tools for you. Let's see. If you have any questions, here's my email address here. Feel free to reach out to me. You can send me an email. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. And you can also go to our website and get our number and just call in and talk to one of our project coordinators. They can help you. They can answer a lot of questions, and they can also forward you on to whoever else can help you. All right, Kylie, I'm needing that that winner here. Where are we at here? I think maybe she's coming down the hall. I've had problems with not being able to see chat from her before. Okay, I have it here. I found it. Okay. Our winner is, I'm probably going to mess up this name, Hugh Nguyen. Hugh Nguyen, congratulations. You're going to get this magnetic wireless charger. What you need to do is reach out to Kylie by email, and she will get this to you, Hugh. Her email address is kylie.braun@xpm.com, and I will spell that for you. That's Kylie, K-Y-L-I-E, period, Braun, B-R-A-U-N, at xpm.com. Again, K-Y-L-I-E, period, B-R-A-U-N, at xpm.com. So that concludes our webinar today. Thank you so much. We appreciate you choosing to spend your valuable time here with us. From all of us here at XPM, thank you and have an excellent day.